On my 22nd birthday, he found my private journal. He rushed me out of the country that same night and spent $1 million staging the wedding of his dreams to marry his white moonlight. Later, I came home with a child in my arms. He stared, stunned. You gave birth? I smiled and nodded. Yes. Just finished postpartum recovery. Before we go on, please subscribe to this channel and tell us in the comments where you're listening. I was still a little dazed as I sat on the plane. I had never imagined that, 5 years after leaving the country, I would ever be allowed to return. After all, Harrison had said I had better not appear in front of him again in this lifetime. But he was also the one who bought my plane ticket back with his own hand so I could attend his and Scarlett's wedding anniversary celebration. After 2 layovers, I finally touched down. Sophie had slept soundly the whole flight, but the moment we stepped off the plane she started to cry. "Mommy, my foot hurts." Hearing her soft sobs, I scooped her up and hurried toward the arrival gate. When I reached it, I powered on my phone to call a ride. Just then, my phone rang. I went silent at the familiar string of digits, unsure whether I should answer. In the end, I didn't. But a second call came right after. I sighed and finally tapped accept. Harrison's voice came through at once. Years had passed since we last spoke, yet his voice hadn't changed. "You're outside the terminal? I've sent Victor to pick you up." He said it like a business directive, as though we were strangers. I gave a bitter laugh. "I can get a cab myself." A second of silence. He probably hadn't expected that answer. After all, back then he'd coddled me, every meal, every outfit, every ride arranged by someone else. I'd never had to hail a taxi. After the pause, he said lightly, "Let Victor come. I picked out a gift for Scarlett for you. It's in the trunk. You can take it straight to dinner." He was still the same considerate Harrison, every detail handled perfectly. Well, the man who had once spent $1 million on decor and had a one-of-a-kind diamond ring custom-made for Scarlett obviously adored her. "Got it." I rubbed my temples and answered in a low voice. He said nothing more, yet he didn't hang up either. Finally, after a long moment, he spoke again. "Jade, 5 years abroad, I hope you've done some real thinking. If you do anything to Scarlett, I won't let you off." The words made me freeze. The terminal noise seemed to vanish. Harrison said he wouldn't let me off. Before I could answer, he ended the call. Really, he didn't need to worry. I had no intention of hurting them. I only wanted to raise Sophie quietly and find a job. As I left the airport I dipped my head. The proud 22-year-old I'd been would never have believed her life could sink this low. I was 22 when Harrison banished me. That day he discovered my leather-bound journal. Avery, my parents never came back from their cruise. Relatives called me baggage and refused to take me in. Harrison, our neighbor, pitied me and offered to pay my way through school. For years we got along smoothly. Then, the year I came of age, I realized I didn't see him as only a benefactor. I loved him, yet I knew we had no future. So I poured every secret longing onto those pages. If Harrison had never read them, I could have kept pretending it was only dependence. But he did read them. He tore the journal to shreds. The gentle, courteous Harrison vanished, replaced by shouting and revulsion. I tried to explain, but words failed. All I could do was bow again and again, saying I was wrong, I shouldn't have fallen for him. His anger didn't cool. The next morning he canceled the job I'd already lined up and, under the excuse of sending me abroad to study, shipped me to a remote university. To keep me from contacting anyone, he even hired a security detail. At first I couldn't understand why he was treating me this way. Then, 1 month after my exile, headlines announced his marriage. Only then did I learn he had always carried a white moonlight in his heart. I replayed the wedding video countless times. In it, when he looked at Scarlett, his gaze was tender and doting, an expression he had never turned on me. From that moment I understood, the years he'd kept me close had been nothing more than sympathy and obligation. The one he loved was Scarlett. "Alex, get in." Victor's voice pulled me back. I nodded, lifted the sleeping Sophie against my shoulder and climbed into the car. A flicker of surprise crossed Victor's face when he saw her. "Alex, this is..." I lifted a finger to my lips, afraid conversation would wake her. Only after I settled in the back seat did I whisper, "She's my daughter." Victor gave a small nod and said nothing more. When he pulled up to our destination, I stared. The Grand was the very hotel where Harrison had married Scarlett. Every anniversary since, he's thrown a lavish party and hand-picked her gift himself. I suppose Harrison truly cherishes Scarlett. In the past few years he hadn't allowed me to set foot in their world. This year he'd flown me home only so I could witness their happiness. I stepped out of the car feeling numb and saw Scarlett standing on the curb, smiling as she walked toward me. Unlike my haggard face and plain clothes, Scarlett wore expensive jewelry and perfume and looked as if Harrison pampered her well. The smile on her face froze for a second. I knew she'd spotted Sophie in my arms. Sure enough, when she reached me, Scarlett's expression was shocked. "Jade, how could you have a baby abroad and not tell me? I've been married to your Uncle Harrison for years and you still treat me like an outsider." Before I could answer, she took Sophie from my arms without asking. Sophie woke up, burst into tears, and struggled to get free. I took her back from Scarlett and soothed her for a while. Scarlett knew I'd once had a crush on Harrison. I hadn't wanted any entanglement with her on this trip home, but she stubbornly insisted on holding Sophie again. When we reached the private dining room, Sophie was still crying, begging to be held only by me. Scarlett forced a smile and thrust her back into my arms. "Your Uncle Harrison knows how hard childbirth is. Over the years we've never even considered children. Seeing that you've actually had a daughter, I'm simply overjoyed." Several people were already seated inside. I'm not used to socializing, so I chose a corner seat, and Scarlett slid in right next to me. She linked her arm through mine and enthusiastically introduced Sophie and me to the others. The stares aimed at me were openly mocking and curious. Unable to stand the strange atmosphere, I said I needed the restroom. After splashing water on my face and heading back, I heard Scarlett's voice. Someone asked her why she'd dragged such an unlucky creature inside. "What unlucky creature?" "Jade is Harrison's family friend's daughter, of course we should look after her. She may have lost her way before, but now that she's a mother she surely won't make the same mistakes." Listening to Scarlett, I stood quietly in the doorway. Yes. To everyone else I was the lunatic who'd tried to seduce another woman's husband, the shameless homewrecker. Sophie tugged uneasily at my clothes. I calmed her and still walked back into the room. Some things have to be faced. I don't know how long passed before everyone in the room suddenly stood. "President Vance has arrived." "Good evening, President Vance." The group swarmed toward the door, but I didn't move, staying in my seat. Only after a long while did I lift my head and look at Harrison. He seemed thinner. Dressed in a dark suit, he had Scarlett tucked against him. When their eyes met, both were all smiles. Harrison was ringed by admirers and didn't notice me in the corner. After all these years, the center of the universe was still the center of the universe. The only one who hadn't fared well was me. Suddenly Scarlett seemed to remember something and, still smiling, nudged Harrison. "Achwan, Jade's here too. You haven't seen each other for ages, catch up." Jade even brought a little surprise. At the word surprise, Harrison remained impassive. He first seated Scarlett and ordered her a bowl of red date and white fungus sweet soup before raising his eyes toward me. Sophie shrank against me in alarm, visibly guarded. Harrison spotted her and his own eyes widened. "Jade, what is this?" He was asking about Sophie. I had never mentioned Sophie to them, so their expressions were identical, either stunned or waiting for a spectacle. Scarlett answered for me. "Achwan, this is Jade's daughter. Isn't she adorable?" The spitting image of Jade, and clearly already several years old. Harrison's gaze rested on Sophie, then shifted to me, sizing me up for a long moment. Just when I thought he would ignore me forever, he spoke hoarsely and pointed at Sophie. "During these years abroad, you married and had a child?" I lifted my head and met his eyes. I married long ago. Sorry I didn't inform you." The room was silent, no one spoke. Harrison kept staring, as if weighing whether my words were true. Scarlett started to say something, but Harrison stepped in front of me. "Where is your husband?" I pressed my lips. "He's busy lately, so he didn't come." A murmur of muffled snickers rippled through the room, though the guests kept it low for Harrison's sake. His face was livid. In the end he said nothing and simply sat down beside Scarlett. I tasted nothing at that meal. Everyone else sang praises of how perfectly Harrison and Scarlett matched, while I only wanted to take Sophie and rest. Local rents weren't too high, I could still afford them. I didn't want to go abroad again. The dinner ended quickly. I rose to leave but Harrison stopped me, saying he needed to talk. Finally he and I stayed behind in the private room, Scarlett as well. His gaze icy, Harrison spoke in the same chill tone. "Jade, since we each now have our own families, I hope you won't disturb me again." Scarlett hid a smile behind her hand. "Achwan, don't be so harsh with Jade. She's a grown woman now, she knows what not to do." The two of them chimed in perfect harmony, as though sharing a private joke, while I stood forever outside their circle. The promises I make, no one ever believes. Still, I nodded and gave a small bow. I won't do it again. Neither of them spoke. I was already turning away, Sophie cradled in my arms. Harrison called Victor to drive me. This time, I refused. Back at the rental, Sophie whispered, "Mom, do that uncle and auntie hate me? They say children notice everything." I shook my head. "They don't hate Sophie, they just hate me." Sophie looked ready to ask more, but in the end she only hugged me. "Mom, you've worked hard." The tears I'd imprisoned all day threatened to fall. I couldn't cry in front of Sophie. "Jordan," I tipped my head back and swallowed the tears. After I'd coaxed Sophie to sleep, a text arrived. "Scarlett, Jade, if you're free, let's talk." I frowned and typed, "Just message me." Scarlett went silent. Just before bed, my phone rang. "I'm downstairs." "Only one question," she said. "Are you still planning to leave the country? Harrison and I would rather you stayed abroad. And your husband's there, right? Better for everyone." I was blank for a moment, then almost laughed. The only thing that could make Scarlett call at midnight was this. They loathed me that much, couldn't bear sharing the same city. I glanced at Sophie, asleep beside me. Outside, Scarlett stood under the street lamp. I drew a steady breath and met her eyes. "I'm not leaving. For Sophie's sake, I wouldn't drag her across oceans again." Scarlett gave a soft laugh. No one else was near, her gaze shed its polish and turned openly scornful. "Jade, I know you're broke. If I offered you money, would you go?" I hesitated. My penniless state was public knowledge. Scarlett and Harrison had watched me scrape by overseas, they knew exactly where to press. I said no. She looked genuinely surprised. We parted on frost that night. The next days blurred, resumes, interviews, rejections after round one. A young interviewer finally stammered that Miss Vance had given orders, no job for me. Scarlett wanted me gone, passport in hand. Stunned, I still thanked him for the truth. Outside the building, my phone buzzed, St. Luke's reminding me of the appointment I'd booked for antidepressants. The doctor said I was circling the drain, weekly therapy might help. The same warning I'd heard overseas. Depression had sunk its hooks deep. Medication in hand, I skimmed the pamphlet, turned a corner, and collided with someone. "Sorry," I began, then found Harrison inches away. Behind him, Scarlett. Harrison frowned and started to pass without a word. Then he noticed the pharmacy bag. "Jade, why are you here?" He reached as if to see the label. I shoved the box into my purse. "Just a cold. Picking up something for it." Scarlett chimed in, "Flus everywhere this season." Harrison stayed silent, eyes still on my bag. I ducked my head and hurried downstairs. Running into him had never been in the plan. Once, I'd begged for even a minute, he'd been perpetually busy. Before exile, we met rarely, brief texts the extent of his attention. Abroad, he vanished completely. Now that I longed for invisibility, he kept appearing. Depression had lived in me for years. At its worst, my body revolted. I'd stood on balconies and fought the urge to step off, yet clung to life. When I let myself in, Sophie was waiting in the living room. She'd slept badly the night before. I decided on an early bedtime. Sleep had almost come when the odor hit, acrid, scorched. Sophie dozed on, oblivious. First I blamed a neighbor's ruined dinner, but the stench thickened, curling under the door. I bolted upright and saw smoke ribboning past the window. The building was burning. Memories detonated. I scooped Sophie up. She rubbed her eyes. "Mom?" Realizing, she clutched my sleeve. "Mom." Fear vibrated in my arms as I carried her into the stairwell. I stumbled 4 times, knees blooming bruise upon bruise, yet felt nothing. Outside, the crowd had already gathered beneath sirens and flashing lights. The fire engines arrived. The scene in front of me merged with the memory from the past. I held Sophie and, as if my strength had vanished, leaned against a tree across from the building. The world before my eyes spun. Sophie asked uneasily, "Mommy, are we going to die?" I came back to myself and hugged her tighter. "No, we won't. As long as Sophie was with me, I would never let anything happen to her. Because Sophie's real mother had already died saving me. During my second year abroad, Harrison's control over me had finally loosened a little. I met a Chinese mentor, Dr. Jensen. She was the university's counseling psychologist, and in my darkest depression I had sought her out. After I confessed my feelings for my guardian, I thought Dr. Jensen would find me filthy too. Everyone else had judged me that way, but she didn't. She encouraged me to leave the past behind and even invited me to work in her lab. She showed me lots of photos of Sophie. Back then Sophie was only a newborn, and Dr. Jensen had just divorced. yet she undeniably loved her daughter. Those days were the closest I ever came to being healed, until one night the research hall caught fire. I was wearing earplugs and didn't hear the alarm. My mentor rushed upstairs to pull me out. Just then, the heat caused the ceiling light to crash down. She threw herself over me. The fixture struck her head dead on. Before the fire trucks arrived, she must have known she wouldn't make it. Clasping my hand, she begged me to adopt Sophie and raise her as my own child. I promised. In the end, my mentor died in the blaze, and I went to pick up Sophie. Sophie was too young. Her memories of her mother were already hazy, and from then on she simply called me Mommy. My depression, meanwhile, grew heavier. Whenever I close my eyes, I see that moment inside the burning lab. It has become the wound in my heart. The only person abroad who had ever been kind to me was gone. In the years that followed, I lived like a walking corpse. When I finally came to, I realized the back of my shirt was soaked with sweat. Just then a car stopped in front of me. The door opened and I saw Harrison's face. He didn't bother to shut it. He strode straight to me and asked if I was hurt. I heard there was a fire. Come on, I'm taking you to St. Luke's. Harrison forgot to keep his distance and grabbed my wrist. I flung him off. Mr. Vance, I'm fine. Don't trouble yourself. This time his reaction was startlingly intense. Jade. What exactly do you take me for? I pulled your overseas medical records. You visited the psychiatric ward at least 3 times last December. You've got depression, don't you? Why didn't you tell me? Facing his barrage of accusations, I felt only irony. The last person on earth qualified to judge me was Harrison. And he kept going. Besides, you never even filed a marriage certificate. Jade, what have you been doing all these years abroad? How did you sink this low? Terrified, Sophie shrank behind me, tears streaming down. I drew a deep breath, lifted my hand, and slapped Harrison hard. The rest of his words jammed like a broken cassette. Harrison touched his cheek and stared at me in a daze. Harrison, what did you expect me to say? I said quietly. That depression made life unbearable? That I almost walked into a shooting? That I lived every day in fear? Honestly, would you have cared? And have you forgotten one thing? You forbade me from contacting you at all. Harrison fell silent. A few seconds later he stepped toward me. I shook my head and wearily moved back half a step. Let it go, Harrison. My life is already what it is, isn't it? From here on, my only wish is to have nothing more to do with him. 5 years is enough to see a person for who they are. I lifted Sophie and walked out of Harrison's sight. Because the arson squad needed to investigate the cause, we were put up in a nearby hotel. Sophie was good as gold. Even in a strange place she didn't fuss. The findings, however, were horrifying. The fire had been deliberate arson, and the person who paid to have it set was Scarlett. Perhaps from the moment I refused to leave the country, Scarlett had decided I should die. Scarlett was taken to the Eastbrook precinct. I hate her, but the fact that Sophie and I are still alive is already the best outcome. I assumed Harrison would keep standing by Scarlett, yet the very next day he announced their divorce. Along with the divorce, he made public the secrets of his marriage to Scarlett. It turned out he had wed Scarlett partly for a corporate alliance and partly to market their perfect couple image and boost the stock price. Before the press, Harrison bowed. I apologize for the years of deception. But I know now my true love was never Scarlett. Watching the report, I felt only bitter irony. Days earlier they had held a gala for their wedding anniversary. Today Harrison and Scarlett were divorced. And Scarlett, in her jail cell, admitted she had meant to murder me. She had simply failed. She refused to apologize and showed no remorse. I met Scarlett once. She looked haggard, yet the hatred in her eyes when she looked at me hadn't dimmed. Jade, I only regret I didn't order them to stab you to death. Even if I forced Harrison to marry me, so what? We've been husband and wife for 5 years. It's all your fault. If you hadn't come back to the country, I never would have tried to kill you. Looking at Scarlett, unhinged and hysterical, I felt nothing but sorrow. Before I left, I finally spoke my first sentence inside the Eastbrook precinct. Scarlett, you schemed every step of the way. Did you get what you wanted? Scarlett didn't answer. Behind me, I heard stifled sobs. I walked out of the precinct. Fate really played a joke on me. If I could do it all again, I would never allow myself to fall for Harrison. The arson attack caused a public uproar, and plenty of people began digging into Harrison and Scarlett. That was when they discovered Scarlett really had initiated contact with Harrison countless times, and the two had even signed a contract marriage agreement before the wedding. Harrison himself kept stressing that their relationship was nothing more than a transaction, but I knew, eyes can't lie. When he looked at Scarlett, there was genuine feeling in his gaze. If Scarlett hadn't made such a fatal mistake, Harrison probably would have kept standing by her. For Sophie's safety, I still decided to move us farther away. Besides, Sophie was old enough for preschool. I enrolled her that week. On her first morning, Sophie was all smiles. When dismissal came, I waited early at the gate. She ran out and threw herself into my arms. "Mommy, lots of kids cried today, but I didn't cry." I ruffled her hair, proud. "Our Sophie is such a brave girl." She chattered on, then suddenly went quiet. She tilted her head and nervously glanced past me. Sensing something wrong, I followed her gaze, and saw Harrison. Dark circles bruised his eyes. He looked as if he hadn't slept in days. His lips pressed tight, he stared at Sophie and me. Sophie still remembered the last time Harrison had shouted at me. She wilted against my shoulder. In the end, it was Harrison who walked over. "Jade. I know everything now." The words set alarm bells clanging in my chest. I tried to step aside, but he stubbornly blocked my path. "This child is your mentor's, isn't she? I can raise her with you." "Your room, I've kept it exactly as it was." "Jade, as long as you turn around, we'll always have another chance." I held Sophie in silence. How pretty his words sounded. As long as I turn around, we'll always have another chance. Funny, why wasn't he saying we had no chance anymore? I wondered if Harrison had ever truly loved me. Perhaps he simply couldn't bear to lose me, no matter under what label. I shook my head. "Harrison, don't say these things. It's all in the past. Good or bad, it was over. The past isn't worth lingering on, and I won't linger." Meeting his stunned stare, I spoke slowly. "You were right before. What I felt for you was more dependence than love. Thank you for making me see that." From that moment on, I needed Harrison no longer. It was the last time we ever saw each other. He seemed to watch me for a long while, but I just kept walking. Back home, Sophie whispered that she had peeked over her shoulder and seen Harrison crying. He cried really hard. Her small face looked troubled. She'd rarely seen a grown-up cry. I nodded. "So, what does Sophie want for dinner tonight?" Children are easy to distract. The moment I mentioned food, she forgot the scene at the gate and enthusiastically debated what we should cook. As I stepped into the kitchen, my phone rang. I glanced at the screen, a job offer email. I had passed an interview a few days earlier. I could officially start work. At long last, the day had come. After so many storms, I'd finally learned that the safest, quietest life is the happiest. After that, I rarely heard news of Harrison or Scarlett. I only knew Scarlett received the death penalty, and the Vance family disowned her. Harrison plunged himself into work until a bleeding ulcer landed him in St. Luke's. While hospitalized, he reached out to me. He volunteered to arrange an estate notarization with me. If anything happened, he wanted every dollar to pass to me. I refused. More accurately, I had no need for his wealth. Late one night, Harrison called. "Jade. I regret that I didn't answer your confession that year, that I chose Scarlett for business instead." His voice was hoarse. I gave a soft laugh and reminded him, "But I never confessed to you, nor planned to." He had read my private journal, sure, but my agenda had never included any confession. I only wanted to quietly like him for a while, nothing more. Still, I paid the price for that youthful affection. Harrison fell silent. Before he could hang up, I ended the call and dragged his number into the blacklist. I suppose Harrison and I were truly saying goodbye. Whatever feelings we'd had were scoured away by time, almost nothing remained. If we meet again, it will probably be at his funeral. My future is still brand new. Thanks for listening to today's story. If you enjoyed it, please like and share. We look forward to hearing your thoughts in the comments. Don't forget to subscribe for more captivating tales. See you next time.